And greetings YouTube gamers, welcome to another episode of Retro Raider. My name is Johnny Retro and welcome to the channel. So today's video guys is going to be a video game memories episode. And if you're new on the channel or if you don't know about this series of videos that I make here on the show, well, video game memories is pretty much a video where I talk about, my video game memories. And these are pretty much stories, these are stories that are attached to a specific video game or a video game system. And today's episode of Video Game Memories is going to be a very special one. First of all, this video is going to be dedicated to a very special friend of mine, but I'm going to leave that to the end of the video. And as you guys can see, this video is going to be about the NES, the original Nintendo Entertainment System. I didn't grow up with this console, I have no childhood memories related to the NES. As a matter of fact, I only started playing NES games in my early 20s. However, guys, the truth is that this little gray box right here, it truly is my favorite home console by Nintendo. So although this video is about me and a friend, it is also about my journey with the NES, how I start to collect for the system. Just let me warn you guys, this video is going to be a little bit different from the videos that I usually make here on the channel. I have no script for this. It might turn out to be a longer video from the ones that I usually make, and it is just going to be a rambling video, me telling you guys a story, my story with the NES. Okay, enough of that, I'm not going to roll the intro, I'm just going to jump right into it. So first of all guys, I have to talk about this friend of mine. And this is not just a regular friend, this is actually my best friend. This friend of mine, his name is Eduardo, and we've been friends literally since the cradle. Our family's known each other since forever pretty much, before we were even born. And we actually have some cousins in common, but we're not related by blood. But we are truly best friends, we're pretty much like family. Now this is a very important part of the story. The saddest thing about me and this guy is that we've always lived apart from each other. I mean, Portugal is a small country, but still we live a little bit far. I was born and raised here in Lisbon, I never left the capital, and he's from a small town called Idenha Nova, and Idenha is a little bit far from Lisbon, it's about 300 kilometers. So we're talking about more or less a 6-hour trip, going and come back. And this was always a pain for us, because, we were best friends, we wanted to hang out, but distance is a bitch sometimes. Now this town, Idenha Nova, it is pretty much the connection between us two. Because my grandmother was from this town, and I have a lot of family there, I have friends, my parents have a house there, and my girlfriend actually is from Idenha as well. So I used to spend a lot of time there, especially when I was a kid, during summer vacations, during winter vacations, Easter, stuff like that. And Eduardo, well, sometimes he used to come to Lisbon as well, to spend the weekend. Now me and this guy, growing up, especially as kids, we always had a lot in common. We liked pretty much the same toys, we grew up playing with Action Man, G.I. Joes, Playmobil, Lego. I remember that we used to call each other always during Christmas, especially after we opened up the presents, telling each other what we got and how awesome it was going to be after we hang out together. We like the same cartoons, we like the same movies pretty much. We are both fans of horror movies. During our teens, we even dated the same girl, but not at the same time, that would be weird. But yeah, we did. And I want to talk about our teens, especially when we were around 12, 13, because that was a very important time for both of us. That's when we really caught up with music. And I would say that still to this day, music remains our biggest connection. We grew up listening to the same bands, going to the same festivals, going to the same concerts. We grew up as metalheads. And this was something very special to us. This was something very important. Because since we were kids, when we started to listen to heavy metal and stuff like that, we were around, 12 years old, and we said that, well, we are going to have a band together. And eventually we did. As you guys know, I used to sing in the band Subliminal Legacy. And unfortunately, I had to quit the band. I quit the band last year. I don't want to talk a lot about that because, that's personal stuff. But, everything is fine between us, but I was just getting tired of the band. But let's go back again and talk about me and Eduardo. So he was the bass player of the band, I was the singer. but we also played other instruments. And since a very young age, we always write music together. And I'm probably going to be a little bit unfair here, but I don't care. the band was pretty much me and Eduardo when it comes to the songwriting. I was also more focusing in writing the songs and about the production, and I also wrote the lyrics, and Eduardo was the sound guy. And that's how pretty much we used to work together. I would present him with a couple of songs, a couple of ideas, and he would just put everything sounding good. So around the same time that we formed the band, I think that we were around 20 years old. At the time I wanted to study music production and songwriting, to have formation in that, to get a better grasp of the craft. And after finishing high school, that was exactly what I did. I went to study music production. Now this was not college, and it was also not high school. I don't know how to say in English, but it was an institute, a place where you specialize in a specific thing, and I don't know how to say that in English. And in this place you had different courses, and I went with music production and songwriting. And in this place there was a different course with different classes about sound recording. And my good friend Eduardo came to Lisbon to study in the same place as me. I went to music production and he went to sound recording. And this was awesome because, finally we were going to hang out together, all the time. And this was very good for him, to come to the city, and his girlfriend was living here at the time, and those were indeed very good times between us. Now, this was the first part of the story, and to put you guys into context, I need to tell you guys a different story, and then I'm going to tell you how they connect. And this is about me and video games. You guys already know I have videos where I talked about that. I started gaming when I was 5 years old on the Sega Mega Drive. Then around 2006, more or less, I was 18 years old. That's when I started to get into retro video games. And this is very important to the whole story. When I got into retro video games, I was mainly focused in the 16-bit era. The Mega Drive, the Super Nintendo, then of course the 32-bit, PlayStation, Sega Saturn, because those were the systems that I grew up playing. And at the time, I didn't care about, the NES, or the Sega Master System, or the ZX Spectrum, or Atari. Let's just say that at the time, 8-bit was kinda, too retro for me, or too old, if you will. Now looking back, of course, that I feel stupid about it, but it was the truth. I was just a little bit skeptical. These games didn't appeal to me. Until one day, I think that this was at a gaming convention. There was a NES there with a bunch of games. And I spent the whole time playing the NES. And of course that, I knew about Mega Man and Castlevania and all of the classics, but this was probably the first time that I was giving a real opportunity to these games. And I said, okay, I'm going to explore the system. I had a bunch of emulators at the time on the computer, and I downloaded a bunch of ROMs, and I started playing NES. Then the collector side of me was like, well, I need to get the real thing. I need to get an NES and a bunch of games. And the problem was that, at the time I was not as much into the community as I am nowadays, and I was not a part of the, the whole collecting scene. And of course that here in Portugal, the NES, it is not an obscure system, of course, but it is a little bit hard to get these in the wild. And this was a huge turn-off for me, because even though it was 10 years ago, the NES was a little bit expensive to collect for. Definitely more expensive compared to the other stuff that I was collecting, compared to the Mega Drive and the PlayStation. It was indeed a little bit overwhelming. And I was still living with my parents at the time, and I just didn't have the extra money to invest in a brand new collection, on an NES collection. So I kind of forgot about it. I was not making my own money, I didn't have my own place or my game room, so I just stuck with the emulators. Now we need to go back to my good friend Eduardo again. Like I said, we had a lot in common. We liked the same type of music, we grew up watching the same movies, playing with the same toys, we were in a band together. But there was this thing that kinda set us apart. My best friend Eduardo, well, he's not a gamer. He never was, and he's probably never going to be. But I remember playing video games with him back in the day when we were kids. He did have a PlayStation back in the day when the system was released. I think it was his first console, but he was always a casual gamer. He would play stuff like FIFA, he liked racing games. I remember that he was a big fan of the Tony Hawk's games. Then he played a couple of computer games as well, SimCity, The Sims, stuff like that. And I also remember playing the Game Boy with him. I mean, at the time, every kid had a Game Boy. Everybody played Tetris, then of course Pokemon came. There was also this game that he was a big fan of, Harvest Moon on the Game Boy Color. But like I said, he would play for a bit, and that was it, because he was not very into it. Me, on the other hand, I was obsessed with video games, and he always respected that. He was always a huge supporter of my hobby. So occasionally I would show him a couple of games about the stuff that I was currently playing, and he was very patient with me because at the time I was a huge RPG fan. I used to play, you know, Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, you know, that was my jam. And my poor friend, you know, he just hated those games, but you know, sometimes he would watch me playing, and he would do that for me. You know, we would play Final Fantasy for a while, a little bit, then we went outside to play. So about him moving to Lisbon 10 years ago, this was 2 weeks more or less before he came to the city. He called me one day, you know, saying that he was packing everything, he was starting the moving, and he told me that in his parents' house, he went to the attic, and he was packing a couple of things, he was getting rid of others. He called me on the phone and told me, well, I found this box, and it is filled with stuff saying Nintendo. Remember that this guy is not a gamer, so he didn't know what it was. And I asked him, well, what it looks like. And literally, guys, we were on the phone, I was at my parents' place, he was in his parents' attic, and he was like, well, I think that this is a video game console. And he told me, well, it is gray, it has 2 controllers, it has a pistol, it has cartridges, you know, big ass cartridges. And then I was like, just snapped. Dude, just send me pictures because I think that's an NES. He sent me a couple of pictures and voila, it was an NES. And this is something that I forgot to mention in the beginning of the video, is that Eduardo is the youngest of 3 brothers. So of course that the Nintendo stuff belonged to his older brothers. And pretty much like Eduardo, they were not gamers at all, they just didn't care about this, they just pack everything in the attic. And I was begging him, you know, dude, just hook up everything, turn it on, just see if it works. And this asshole, he was like, no, I'm not going to do that, I'm just going to pack everything, I'm going to be there in a couple of weeks, and you can see it for yourself. And the wait in those 2 weeks, it was, you know, it was excruciating. It almost looked like, you know, pre-Christmas time. Not only I was waiting for my best friend to finally come to Lisbon, but he was bringing an NES with him, you know, a freaking NES. 2 long weeks had passed, and he finally arrived in Lisbon. He was setting up, he went to meet his girlfriend, and the day after he came to my place. And this right here, guys, this is what he brought with him. I hooked up everything, we turned the system on, and it was working. And I was just mesmerized about the whole thing. I mean, this was early September, I think, you know, at the end of the summer, but it really felt like Christmas to me. I was having the best time of my life, and I told him, dude, please let me stay with this a little bit, you know, at least while you're staying here in Lisbon studying. And this is the kicker of the story. Because he looked to me and said, what do you mean? This is for you. And I was like, dude, you just can't give me this. This is not even yours. These belongs to your brothers. And he was like, well, they don't care about this stuff. Just keep it. And I'm not gonna lie, guys. I want it. I wanted this. But I'm talking about my best friend, you know. I had to be honest with him. Everything was, you know, really well preserved. Everything was working. Everything was clean. And I told him, well, you don't have a fortune here, but this might be worth something. Maybe your brothers want to sell this, you know, this could easily be worth, you know, 100 euros or so. And he was like, no, F my brothers, you're my best friend, I know that you like this old vintage video game stuff, just keep it. And I accepted the gift. So this was how my NES journey began. Now I'm going to show you guys really quick everything that he brought with him, and this is still the original stuff that he brought. We have, of course, the NES, but I will show you that in a bit, because this is not just the standard NES. 2 controllers, it came with 2 original NES controllers, and everything is in a prestige condition. He also brought a zapper because, you know, you need the zapper with the NES. So this is for the controllers. Now, about the NES, this is not just a typical NES. This is the PAL version of the system, but not the typical PAL version. Hope that you guys can see right here, it says European version, but on the side, you don't have any connections here. And this is why. This is because this model right here, this version, is the RGB French Edition of the NES. I didn't know this at the time, but this version of the NES, this specific model, was exclusive to France. They had to change the connections due to the signal in the French televisions, and it is RGB. It came with a specific cable, which I also have. Now, it is not native RGB, so to speak, but you can tell the difference a little bit in terms of the the quality of the image. And again, I didn't know this at the time, but I would dare to say that this is the rarest version of the NES. I think that it is even harder to get compared to the top loader. So looking back, I'm very happy with it. Now, most importantly, let's talk about the games. And he brought a couple of games with him. 10 games to be specific. And let's look at the 10 original games that he brought. First of all, we have a light gun game. This is trick shooting. Barker Bill's trick shooting. To be honest with you guys, I didn't play a lot of this game, but you know, it's just parts of the stuff that he brought, and I think that that's the reason why they had the light gun. Now, a couple of sports games. I don't like sports games, but I guess that, you know, his brothers enjoy it, and I have a couple of them here. First of all, we have tennis. Then we have the classic World Cup. I think that World Cup was one of the very first NES games that was 4-player compatible. And we also have, this is a special one, this is Super Spike V-Ball. This is a volleyball game, guys, and let me tell you, I think that this truly is a hidden gem on the NES. It is a sports game, it is volleyball, there's nothing much to it rather than that, but it is just a fun game to play. Like World Cup, it can also be played with 4 players. And me and Eduardo, we used to play this game a lot when he brought the NES to my place. And sometimes, believe it or not, guys, we still play this game together. Now, the next game, this one is a classic. This is RC Pro-Am. I truly think, guys, that, you know, if you're starting out collecting for the NES, this is a must-have on the system. You know, even if you don't like racing games, just picked RC Pro-Am. Now, the next one, and this is one that I played a lot when I first got the NES, and it is Red Gravity. So when I got all of this stuff, guys, you know, I didn't know much about the NES, you know, I was just looking mainly for the classics, but that's what I love about the NES. There's, you know, so many amazing hidden gems. And Red Gravity at the time was indeed a hidden gem for me. Now, this next one, a little game called Donkey Kong Classics. Of course that I knew about Donkey Kong. I was a huge fan of Donkey Kong Country. This is a great compilation, guys. I mean, the classic Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., you really can't beat that. And also let me say that, you know, the ports of the classic Donkey Kong on the NES, I think that it is one of the best ports of the original arcade game. And last but not least, we have this little trilogy right here. Now, for each new Nintendo owner, and that could be the NES, the Super Nintendo, the Nintendo 64, or the Nintendo Switch, I would say that a mandatory game for each Nintendo platform is a Super Mario game. And my friend Eduardo brought me the whole classic trilogy with him. The original Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. 2, this one, and of course, Super Mario Bros. 3. I know that this one is probably everybody's favorite. My favorite one of the three, I would have to say that it is the first one. I don't know, I mean, it is just a very, very charming game. So yeah, since day one as a NES owner, I had all of the classic Super Mario games. And that was it, guys. That was it for me. I mean, what better way to start into collecting for the NES than this? And the rest is history. I've been collecting for the NES ever since, during 10 years now. And over here, this is my collection, my humble NES collection. I don't have a lot of games, but you know, I'm very proud with the stuff that I have, and I don't take any of this for granted. Let me just say this, guys. I'll do, you know, the stuff that I have right here, you know, these are not rare stuff. Maybe this particular model is a little bit. And these are very common games. I would dare to say that these are staples for hardcore collectors. But this is something that I treasure a lot. And I wouldn't get rid of this stuff for anything. Let me honestly say that I would rather get rid of everything that you guys see on this shelf than to get rid of any of these items. These are very special for me. This was a gift from my best friend, and for me, you know, this story, you know, the story that I've just told you guys, this is what retro gaming is all about for me. It is not about having, you know, a big collection. It is just not about nostalgia. It is about the story, and the story that I just told you guys, it is one of my favorite stories, one of my favorite video game memories. Now, to sum it up, guys, and to finally finish this very long video, the reason why I made this video today, the reason why I'm dedicating this video to Eduardo, it's because today is his birthday. My best friend is turning 30 years old today, and unfortunately, I just can't be with him. After finishing his studies here in Lisbon, he had to come back to his town, to Idania. And he still lives there, he's working there. So we are separated again, we are living apart from each other again. But the important thing is that we are still best friends. We still talk to each other on a regular basis. I go there sometimes. He also comes to Lisbon sometimes. But, you know, I don't want to get too much personal into it, but the truth is that, you know, since I left the band, we don't spend as much time together as we used to. Because the band, you know, the band still exists, and I will leave the link of the Subliminal Legacy Facebook page on the description box below. You know, he still plays with the band, and they have the band there in Idania. So when I was in the band, I used to go to Idania all the time. But nowadays what happens is, you know, life happened. We have jobs, we have bills to pay, and it is just hard. Sometimes it is hard. So yeah, I'm going to be a little bit lame here, but Eduardo, este filme é para ti, my friend. Espero que tenhas gostado e parabéns. And yeah, he's going to kill me for that because he's a very shy guy. But I know that you watch my videos, I know that you were my very first subscriber, so f*** off. And this was the video, guys. This is my NES story. Thank you so much for listening to my story, guys. I really hope that you guys have enjoyed this video. And congratulations to you if you managed to stick it to the end. And let me know about you guys, let me know on the comment section below if you have a specific story, a strong memory attached to a video game or a video game system. And just let me know on the comment section below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to put a like on this video, please subscribe to the channel, and take care of yourselves, take care of the gaming community, and game